Hello, everyone. Thanks for popping in to join us in our first 2021 alumni conversation. It's great to have everybody come back. We are very much excited to hear from a wonderful group of alums who are currently working within the legal profession. They have a lot of great insight and wealth of wisdom to share with us, so I hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Thanks, Ms. Davis. First of all, welcome all of you. We're excited that you have a few minutes to chat with us. I'd love for you guys to begin by just introducing yourself, sharing which class you graduated from at Walker, where you went to law school or undergrad, if you'd like to include that, what kind of law you practice in layman's terms, if you could. And maybe if you have a favorite memory or a favorite class or a favorite teacher, although we don't want to get into the politics of that, just anything that you'd like to share about your Walker experience. And Bynum, will you go first?
Hello, everybody. Bynum Jager. Live in Chicago, Illinois now. I graduated from Walker in 2004. Then I went up the road to Furman in Greenville, South Carolina. I graduated from Furman in 2008. Spent a little time in the military, going back and forth between the military and law school. So eventually made my way over to New Orleans and went to Tulane Law School in New Orleans. I tell people I was the longest law student of all time because I got 2 years of law school done prior to taking a military leave. And then I went and flew helicopters in the Army for 2 years and went back and finished law school. But during that time, I started working for the current company I work for, which is Harlan Sports here in Chicago. My favorite memory or favorite class, well, I got a lot of great memories on the athletic fields and the basketball courts with Coach Block. Probably the favorite class was with another Furman grad, Steve Killian, was current events. Probably set me up for success there. Just being able to consume a lot of information in a short period of time, to be able to critically think about it, understand certain biases within what you're reading. I just felt like that was probably the most impactful class I had on the rest of life. So very much appreciate that and look forward to being here today.
Thank you so much. Kevin?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. My name is Kevin Patrick, and I graduated from Walker in 2001. After that, I went to Georgia for undergrad, graduated there with degrees in history, Latin, and classical culture. Then attended law school at Mercer and graduated there in 2008. There's a few of my classmates on this panel. It's good to see everyone. From there, I went to clerk for a judge for a number of years in the Northern Circuit Superior Courts. Then actually represented insurance companies for a number of years. And about 5 years ago, I started my own practice. So depending on who you ask, either I went to the dark side or now saw the light doing plaintiff's work. In the vast majority of the case are automobile accidents these days. But I certainly have to give credit where credit's due, and that goes to all the teachers at Walker. And there are two teachers that have really, in reflecting on this conversation today and preparing for it, I'd have to say it's Miss Strickland, and it was very just beyond grateful to have had her for 3 of my 4 years with American history, early European, and I believe also my freshman year, early world history, and also Father Jim and his really love of Latin and focus on Cicero, the Roman orator and statesman, was a catalyst for law school as well. But again, thanks so much for having me, and I really look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much. Mr. Newton?
Well, thank you. And you don't have to call me Mr. Newton. You can just call me Earl. I'm so glad to be on this call with everybody. My name is Earl Newton. I graduated Walker in 2001 in Kevin Patrick's class. My favorite class at Walker, I knew you were going to ask a question like that, and it is very political. So I'm going to give a political answer. Every class I had with Gene Strickland, all right? So I agree with Kevin Patrick there. And I also really loved AP Government with Mr. Killian because I'm a kind of government political type person. So that those fed my strengths. I went to the University of the South, which is commonly known as Sewanee. It's in Tennessee. It's a small liberal arts college. I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. no surprise there. And then I ended up at Mercer University School of Law, a year behind Kevin Patrick. And I'm now an assistant district attorney, which means I am a prosecutor, prosecute those charged with crimes. And I work for a circuit, which is, my circuit is just 2 counties in Northwest Georgia. How did I get this position? Well, it's another Walker connection. First of all, I'll say I probably never thought I would go to law school other than maybe to be a politician. Kind of glad that hadn't worked out so far. But Victoria Aronow was a parent at Walker when I was in law school, and she's an attorney in Marietta, and she got an internship for me at the Cobb District Attorney's Office. And that first summer, I realized that I want to be a prosecutor, that's really my calling so far in life. So thanks for having me. That's my short story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How about Jennifer? Jennifer, will you share a little bit with us?
Absolutely. Again, thank you guys for having me. And hello, Josh and Aaron, my fellow classmates there. Good to see you guys again. So I am Jennifer Hubbard. I graduated Walker in 1994 and then went to Spelman College, which is a small liberal arts HBCU right here in Atlanta. And then went from there to Northwestern Law in Chicago. So my favorite class or teacher, I should say, at Walker. I'm impressed with everybody who's able to remember all the questions that you've asked.
It's a long list.
But was Mr. Devers. Mr. Devers taught drama while I was at school there, and he was absolutely incredible. I miss him dearly. I also very much enjoyed Spanish with Mr. De Santiago and Mrs. Bowden as well. English with Mrs. Bowden. So I have a couple of wonderful teachers and experiences there. Currently, my role is working for the State Court of Fulton County. I manage the Self-Help Center there. And a Self-Help Center, for those who may be listening and not be familiar with what that is in the court, is essentially a center geared towards individuals who have to navigate the court system representing themselves. So my job is to think about access to justice for people who fall into that niche of not quite qualifying for legal aid services and maybe can't afford the services of an attorney and find themselves in court and have to figure out a way to get through the process, which can be very intimidating. Prior to assuming that role, I actually worked at a large law firm right out of law school here in Atlanta doing business litigation, and then went on to a smaller law firm where I got my feet wet in consumer law and probate, but sort of by chance with a lot of pro bono work. That's how I found my way into the court. They were looking for someone to sort of assume the role and be an attorney to give consultations to tenants facing evictions. I started off doing that, and in time that role developed, and now I manage the center that I initially was volunteering at.
Thank you. Thank you for that work that you're doing. Josh?
Hey, good to see my classmates, Aaron and Jennifer. I'm another graduate of 1994. It's hard to pick one or two teachers, but as been mentioned before, Jean Strickland just inspired so many students for generations. We all did our family tree with her. You know, it's one of those things that makes you a Walker person. Dixie Bowden was also someone who really introduced me to reading for pleasure. And she's just an incredibly inspiring person. I hadn't thought of Mr. Devers in a long time, but man, he was a force of nature. No one could forget an experience with Mr. Devers. I went to Clark University in Worcester, Mass, then came back and went to Georgia State, where I actually hooked up with Aaron Strimban, who's another Walker grad from our year. I clerked in Cobb County Superior Court briefly, then became a public defender, where I represented all kinds of crazy people, and I was going to save the world one by one. And that's hard. After doing that, I was invited out west to go to some specialized training and started my own firm, which now is a partnership with two other lawyers. Chenko Schiffer represents individuals when something terrible's happened. Either you've been arrested or harmed or injured We have our main office in Roswell, and then our other offices in the US Virgin Islands. We do a lot of kind of non-traditional weird stuff, and I solve problems for people. And it's incredibly enjoyable. Practicing law, like medicine, it gives you the opportunity to make an intimate impact on someone's life kind of forever. And that's a really cool thing to take away from a quote unquote job.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Walker experience has been immense in my career. I talk about it forever.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Aaron?
Well, thank you again for inviting me to join the call, and hello to Josh and Jennifer from 94, as well as everybody else. Honored to follow behind y'all. Once again, I'm Aaron Lipson, a 94 grad. Favorite class at Walker? You know, all the academic classes were certainly incredibly strong, and all of the teachers I have fond memories of, but the class I look back and think that's the one that I have learned the most from was definitely PE with Barry Foy. There are plenty of classes where you can learn the academics. You know, I learned a lot about life from Barry Foy, about how you should treat people, how you shouldn't treat people. And the lessons that I learned from Coach Foy, some of the most important ones I've learned in my life. I went to Yale undergrad and then came back home to UGA for law school. The whole reason I went to law school actually is a Walker connection. The faculty helped me get a summer job with Cobb County that ended up with me being a pretrial release officer. So I went to jail every day during the summers in Cobb County to work with inmates and see if we could help get them out a little sooner than their court date. But after law school, I started in private practice, but spent about the next 15 years at the Securities and Exchange Commission. So investigating and prosecuting things like Ponzi schemes, insider trading, big financial frauds at public company. And after 15 years of that, I went back into private practice at a firm in Atlanta called King & Spalding. And I represent companies and individuals who have issues and questions they need to respond to the government on. So it might be the Department of Justice, the SEC, the FBI, but helping them work through what are often kind of existential questions for a company or an individual about what could be the end of the company or the end of a individual's career or their liberty. And so that's enough to keep you pretty busy and try and help folks make good decisions.
Thank you. And Abby, we'll wrap it up with our youngest alum on the panel.
Hi all, and I'm sorry to jump in late. So I graduated Walker from 2011. I went straight to Tufts University for undergrad. It's up in Massachusetts. And then I realized quickly that was too cold. So I went to UVA for law school straight through. And then I am currently a third-year litigation associate at a big firm in DC called Kirkland & Ellis. So basically what I'm doing is working on major commercial disputes between very large companies usually, or sometimes it's a plaintiff suing a very large company. I took a year to clerk in Atlanta, actually, on the 11th Circuit. So I got to go home for a year, and that was great, especially during all of this. I think it's been really great to hear everybody's answers and how much Ms. Strickland impacted everyone here. I'm hopeful that y'all have. I'm sorry that Walker had to, lose her, but I've kept in touch with her over the years. But I think all the teachers at Walker have been excellent, and I know there's another Miss Strickland there for everyone. So she was a huge impact on my decision. As far as how I ended up at my firm, we can talk about this maybe a little bit later, but like a traditional way you get a job out of law school is a bunch of employers will come to the law firms, and you sit with them for like 20 minutes. And if they like you, you get a callback offer. And then if you do an interview with them at the firm, then you can be offered a job. So that's like a traditional way to get the job, and that's how I got my job. So that's something you want to talk about later. It's not quite as exciting, but I'm loving my job so far.
Very good, very good. I think I got everybody. Thank you guys. I don't know what went on in the class of 1994, but we seem to have produced quite a number of attorneys out of that group. But it's great to have all of you as a part of our panel today, and we appreciate you so much. Some of you guys may have already touched on this in your introductory chat, but let me just, if I could ask you, when you think back on your Walker experience, can you share with us one or two things that you think you learned here that really helped to prepare you for undergrad and or for law school? And I'll throw it out to anybody who wants to unmute themselves first. And if you don't unmute yourself, I'm going to call on you. So
I think
I'll jump
Walker, I
Go
think
ahead, Josh.
Walker gave us all the opportunity to be free and self-directed more than most people and to really inquire. When I showed up at admittedly a small liberal arts school, it was a natural progression because you were encouraged to question why you didn't understand or why something was this way and not that way. And that mentality carries on through law school because at heart, most lawyers are problem solvers. And Walker really encouraged us to ask tough questions that a lot of times the teachers didn't have necessarily an answer for. We were encouraged to really work on it ourselves. But it all kind of pales in comparison to the relationship building skills that Walker really foments in people, where you get to know people and it means something.
Very nice. Great answer. Who else?
I would just piggyback on that. That is a huge component. It's the relationships, not only with your classmates, but also with your teachers. And I will say, combine that with the work ethic that Walker instills. I think that there were sometimes in my high school career that I worked harder at Walker than I had to in undergrad, if that makes sense. My teachers prepared me so well, and they expected so much of me that the bar was set very high, and there was very little room for excuses. So when I got to undergrad, I was already ready to work. I knew how to work and I knew how to organize, and all of a sudden I had a lot more time. So that was a nice combination. So I was really ready for the workload, and obviously that carries into law school and it carries into the practice of law. Lawyers have to be busy all the time. We have to be on top of our workload, and we have to process a lot of information as part of our everyday job, just to understand what problems we need to solve. So Walker, all of those.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Rebecca. This is Kevin. Building off what Earl and Josh are talking about, it's really the Walker, the values, the community. And I think that community extends well beyond just the teachers, like we talked about, the Ms. Stricklands, Mr. Guckards, Mr. Parker, and so forth, but also the Walker, again, the community as a whole. And one thing that inspired me was the mock trial program, both in our junior and in senior years. And that really gave us the opportunity to become immersed into what it's like to try a case, to be given a civil case to prepare for, and likewise, I think in our senior year, a criminal case. And really the commitment of other legal professionals, whether it's judges, attorneys, to volunteer their time to help coach us. I remember in our year was the Sunday nights at the Cobb County Superior Court building for the time they invested in us. And I think that also carries on here today. And I think it's a Walker, really the alumni is willing to give back and to help those who want to pursue a career in the law.
Thank you. Those are great answers. And I hear that consistently among our alums. And I know it's inspiring for our faculty to hear you guys talk about how prepared you were. I know that that's a message that they love to hear. Next question, I'm just wondering, did anybody sort of come to this decision to pursue law maybe perhaps a little later in life than typically, or does anyone have an interesting sort of path or would like to share how they decided they wanted to be a lawyer or to serve in the law field Abby or Jennifer or Erin?
I'm pretty traditional, at least in the sense that I went straight through, so I don't have too much to add there.
Did you know you always wanted to be an attorney? You did.
Yeah. And so again, I mean, not to go back to your last question too much, but like having the Walker mock trial program there, if you're a person who is weird or great, I don't know what you want to call it, but if you're 7 years old and want to be a lawyer and your high school has the amazing mock trial program that it has, that was huge for me. So I think, able to really concentrate on that. But that said, I think there's a lot of great people that I work with that took multiple years off after undergrad and had amazing careers before becoming lawyers. So I don't think in any sense, I'm sure the other panelists can talk, but I don't think in any sense you need to decide right away that you want to be a lawyer. There's plenty of time to decide.
I kind of defaulted out into law when I graduated undergraduate in 1998. I'd majored in international relations, and I was going to go save the world in, Peace Corps and foreign service, but those jobs weren't out there. And the law attracted me because other people I respected said, it's a Renaissance person's degree. You can read, you can write, you can advocate, and you're an all-around smart, accomplished kind of person. And that was interesting. And then when I was in law school, I wanted to be a big corporate lawyer until I found out that I didn't. And, I never had an interest in criminal law or civil rights or victims' rights. That's all I do all day now. Mm-hmm. And that was, again, Walker and the law allow you to really strike that path. We all thought Aaron Lipson was going to be a doctor. He was a knife salesman with my brother, door to door in 1992. No one knew he was going to become one of the nation's experts in some really complicated stuff. And that's a great part about the law. Jennifer, I think I probably speak for you a little bit. You're talking about Spelman and Northwestern. No one says, oh, you're going to go run one of the most important community-facing projects in the busiest state court in Georgia. I doubt that was what you started out to do when we were 16, 18, but look at the importance that Jennifer, or the important mark she makes on literally tens of thousands of people a year.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, Rebecca, I just wanted to say for those who don't have the traditional path to law school, certainly something that was encouraged. My father was an attorney, so the seed was planted. And I would often have people tell me that there were aspects of my personality that they felt fit well with law. But honestly, I mentioned Mr. Devers and drama earlier. I was heavy into acting and theater and anything arts related. When I went to Spelman, I continued with that. I actually wound up majoring in philosophy and Spanish, go figure, but love those two things. And was doing that. And when I was getting ready to graduate, it was kind of like, well, what are we gonna do? I had the intent of going into broadcasting and had started making some connections. And the more I learned about the industry, the less I felt like it was a good fit for me. So I knew what I didn't want to do. And so it was kind of coming down to, are we gonna go to graduate school? And made the decision to go to law school with the thought that you can do a whole lot of things with a law degree, which I'm happy to discuss with some who may have that question. That's not entirely true, but it does. There are a lot of options in that field. So that's kind of what led me to law school.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to hear that there are a variety of paths. And Bynum, I'm going to jump off of what Jennifer said there and just ask you to tell us a little bit more about your role there in sports. And how your law degree is helping you in your current role, because I do think it is a little bit different. Like Jennifer was saying, it's a different type of use of the degree. Will you share with us a little bit?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'd say I probably use my law degree for about 20% of what I do. So I work for a company called Harlan Sports Management. We're a boutique sports agency where we represent college and pro football coaches, here in Chicago, Illinois. So guys that are NFL head coaches all the way down to, college assistant coaches, and then I represent some media clients who are, some guys that talk about sports on TV, kind of like Jennifer said, some broadcasters, and then a couple of guys that have some of the top sports podcasts in the country. And so most of my work is transactional. As far as, I didn't go the traditional route. I never, I guess we all kind of ended up at Cobb County at some point. I worked for Judge Bodiford in Cobb County after my first year of law school. And that was really the only traditional, legal background I had. After my second year, I worked for, Harlan Sports for the first half, and I was going to work for Justice Hines, who just passed away recently, for the second half of the summer. And I actually ended up calling Justice Hines and turning him down because I found, I was really happy in Chicago. I was getting to work in sports and every day, and build relationships. And I knew this is what I wanted to do. So I ended up turning down Justice Hines and staying up here. And then the Army called me and said, hey, you got to go to flight school right now. And so whenever I had time off in the Army, I'd fly from Enterprise, Alabama back to Chicago, and I'd actually sleep on another Walker grad's couch, a guy named Brian Bloom. He'd let me crash on his couch in Chicago, and I would go work for free for the company I work for now. And I just build those relationships. And so I started, as an intern, and now, I've been working here for a decade, and, we're one of the, I guess, there's 6 people in our world that represent 95% of the college and pro football head coaches. And so we've just been able to kind of grow a business organically. But as far as the legal background, my entry point was because I'm the only employee of our company that has a law degree. So all the contract work gets kicked to me. And so, I'm a pseudo general counsel, but there's not a ton of general counsel duties. It's more just transactional work.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's, an interesting thing to ponder is, again, as Jennifer said, and as you're pointing out, what else can you do besides being an attorney with a law degree? So I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that has come up with all of you, in addition, not all of you have slept on each other's couches, obviously, but clearly the relationships that you build at Walker and the connections that you have far outlast your years on this campus. Can anybody speak to the value of those relationships? I know sometimes when you're a student, you're looking around at each other, you're thinking, I've been in school with this person for 12 years, I can't wait to move on. And that's normal. But then when life circles back around, you find that those people that you spent 12 or your high school years with, whatever, how many ever years it may be, are people that you have lasting relationships with. Anybody want to speak to that?
Many of them get arrested and injured. It's been quite profitable, bluntly.
Aaron, we haven't heard from you. Do you have anything to share on that topic or others?
You make decisions and evaluations and judgments about people when you're in high school, and that's a normal part of high school. And you've got friends that you'll keep, and folks that may have been more on the acquaintance side, but you recognize ultimately that the path that you thought people might walk down is not the path they always end up walking down. And so you need to recognize that everyone has something valuable to contribute at some point. And if you foreclose relationships or wall yourself off from certain relationships, you're giving up a lot, because everyone that you go to school with is going to have something very valuable to contribute. And it really is worthwhile keeping all those doors open, because whether it is a professional issue, a social issue, a medical issue, you don't know what it's going to be. But any relationship that you can have that's forged by spending that kind of time together, it's a worthwhile relationship. You should always keep those doors open.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I can add to that too. So I'm about to be the maid of honor in my best friend from high school's wedding. She's about to be the maid of honor in mine. There's other friends that I use for professional relationships all the time who are wonderful people, and I could never imagine that they'd have their own businesses, when they were 18, but they do, and they're incredibly successful and they're wonderful to work with. But building off what Aaron said, something that somebody told me like one of the first days of law school was, don't be a jerk. And that has stuck with me. I wish somebody had told me it when I was in high school. I tried to be a nice person, but I never had that shocker, because there are going to be people, especially with Walker, with how wonderful people turn out from that school, that are going to be doing incredibly great things. And like people do remember how you treat them, whether it's high school or law school or whatever, like you're gonna run into them again. So like that would just be my thing to like kind of keep in the back of your head. Like it's never worth it to be mean. It's always good to work with somebody and build up other people because you don't know when you're gonna need them. And like I live in DC and I still like run into my friends a lot whenever I come back into Atlanta. So they're definitely lifelong people that you're gonna have in your life.
I love that. Don't be a jerk. I love it.
I just wanted to just one small thing with that.
Yeah.
Because relationships you find, ultimately, yeah, they lead you to the next step, be it personally or professionally, that kind of thing. You never know who's going to weave in and out of your life. But as Abby was saying, of course, be kind. And you want those relationships to be authentic. So it doesn't necessarily mean to force a relationship with the hopes that one day this person may see me professionally or, that kind of thing. But if you just have that baseline of being a kind person, being a decent person, even if you don't keep up with them, for 20 years, you see them again, what they remember is how you treated them and you remember how they treated you. And if there is an opportunity there, then that sort of develops organically. So I say that to say it's a big thing that I had to learn with networking, because I always associated that word with sort of putting on to an extent, but what networking really is you have to build an authentic, real, organic relationship, have something seriously in common, but that minimal is just being a kind, decent person.
Thank you. These are great answers and great insight to share. Zane, why don't you unmute yourself and throw out a couple of questions that we had from students.
Yeah, of course. It's been great listening to some of these questions and all of y'all's replies. So there were 2 questions that were submitted that stood out to me in a poll I did with the student body. The first one kind of ties to just current times, and is it difficult to be in government or law during times of like social unease?
I would say absolutely not. When you're talking about all of the issues that have surrounded us in the past year and that we're in the middle of now, being able to support and enforce the structures that we all rely on, whether that be the court system, whether that be professional services, whether it be advancing FDA approval of certain drugs and vaccines. Those are all things that the law is heavily, heavily involved in. And it's been a very busy time to be a lawyer because so many people, so many companies are facing issues they never could have imagined. And the existing law was not ready for that. And so being able to help people navigate has really, I think it's made a positive difference. There's always areas as lawyers we can definitely do better in. But I think there's been a lot of areas in the past year where the legal community, the legal profession has stepped up.
Following up on that, the COVID and the political upheaval has created an opportunity for lawyers to serve and shine more than ever before, because lawyers are very active in times of trouble. Jennifer's court is going to be facing the largest number of evictions in the history of Georgia as soon as we open up the courts again. And she's the front line there. Earl Newton, he prosecutes cases in Northwest Georgia. Northwest Georgia is a pretty happening spot right now in the world of law and order. And the entire universe of prosecution and defense has shifted dramatically during this. Kevin does an enormous amount of injury work involving daycares and adult care centers. Those centers are at the heart of the relationships we care about most, because we took a lot of lower paid employees and exposed them to our most cared for family members. And that's precisely where parts of Kevin's practice exist. And he's dealing with stuff that's never been dealt with before. How do you run a business with employees that are immune from lawsuit? And what does that result in? So it's been a great opportunity for lawyers to really do great stuff and make an impact.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
Thanks, Jeff.
on that
Those are
question?
This is Kevin Patrick. And I couldn't agree with everyone more. And I know this past year has been particularly challenging with COVID and really the polarizing issues that are facing our country and nation. What I realized too, as lawyers, we're also counselors. And sometimes when clients will come to see us, they may be very, uneasy about maybe the world situation, things facing our nation. But one of our jobs is also to listen and be that voice of compassion and understanding, and to know that even though people see things differently, we can always try and again be those counselors to help, bridge the gaps, hear both perspectives, and ultimately work amicably, whether it's with opposing counsel or whomever, to find an amicable solution so people can recognize that there are challenges, but again, there's also very real solutions, and as lawyers, we can carry that torch.
Thank you. Zane, what was our second question?
Our second question was, in regard to college, were there any specific courses that you feel helped you a lot later on that you appreciate looking back?
So college, I'm sorry, Earl, go ahead.
Well, I would say my advice personally, go with the courses in college that speak to you, that are most interesting to you. Don't worry so much as someone coming into college about what do I want to do for the rest of my professional life, because you might change that several times between the time you graduate college and the time you retire. In fact, it's highly likely you will. And even if you become a lawyer, you could change the type of law that you're practicing several times. So you don't have to map out your whole life in college, because it's basically impossible. So take that pressure off yourself. Go with the courses that you like, because that's really going to develop you as a person, and you'll figure out who you are. That's part of college too. It's learning who you are.
I 100% agree with Earl on that, and not thinking about, is this going to get me to the next step in law school? Because I was sitting in class with people who were theater majors, history majors. I was a philosophy major, Spanish major, English major. There's so many different paths in law school because you can use those tools in the law. Things like learning, how your comprehension, reading, writing skills, language skills, even with drama, being able to relate to others, anticipate things. There's so many connections there. So just about any class is going to help you with that next step in law school. I would just say, unless you are going through and you want to do patent law, then you're going to have to take some engineering. I mean, there's some things you're not going to be able to avoid, but as a whole, just about any course that you're taking is going to be of benefit to you in law school.
I think identifying the professors that you really like is really important.
Yeah.
And that's the relationship. Take classes, build relationships with smart people. As for the single best class, I took a very deep dive into one particular philosopher, Hannah Arendt, and the skills that I learned reading everything she'd ever written and writing and talking about ad nauseam. And that prepares you for doing the same thing later on with something else that you're interested in.
Abby, did you have something you wanted to add real quick?
Sure. I think everybody's completely right, and you should take what you're interested in, and that's how you'll do well. I would just add, if just to put my experience on specific classes I really enjoyed, and I think you should take every writing class you possibly can in whatever field you're interested in. You can write about what topics you find interesting, but you should write, I think, at any point possible you can. Not every lawyer writes a lot, but if you're a litigator, you probably will. So Walker does a great job of giving you a foundation for writing. I think they do at one of the best high schools of anybody else I knew, but I would write. And then I also took a class called Logic. It was in the philosophy department, and I took it actually as a math credit. But it teaches you, I think, how to think like a lawyer. You translate phrases into symbols, and then that changes into a logical sentence. I haven't taken it in a while, but as far as I also wouldn't take it as a freshman at all. But later on, if you see a logic class and you're still interested in a law school and you're looking at taking the LSAT or whatever, I would take that course. And if you don't go to law school, it will still be a very helpful class to you, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Last question, and then we'll make it quick because I know we're at the end of our time. I do want to again thank you guys, and I also love the idea that now you know each other. You all, the group of you now has a little support group amongst yourselves. I know that no one minds being reached out to and connecting on any other level. I'm glad to have gotten you guys together. My last question, and I'm going to ask you to keep it brief, which maybe is kind of tough. In 1 or 2 words, when you think back on your time at Walker, what is the one thing that stands out to you? Bynum?
I'd say the people. I think we had incredible role models in my friends' parents. Just getting to see incredible examples of successful professionals and people. My dad's a Delta Airlines pilot. My mom's a nurse. I didn't think about I didn't know what it meant to be a lawyer or a doctor. And so getting to see some great examples, like the Bloom family, the Kay family, and how those individuals, pursued successful businesses. I thought it was a great example of what life could be. And then 2 was just the community.
Marina, I'm on this call.
And
Josh?
All right.
The people, I have friends that are my age, a year above me and a year younger than me. To see the ability to stay in touch with those people doing incredible things, I thought are just incredible examples of people that I'm very so.
Thank you, Aaron.
You said 1 word or 2. I'll go with Hamishi, which is a Yiddish word. It means sweet and kind, and that's a nice part of Walker. There's plenty of time in life to get roughed up. Walker's a pretty good place to focus on things besides that. It's one of the best qualities of it.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Friendship and preparation. 2 words.
Thank you. Abby?
Friendship and challenges, but the good kind of challenges.
Very nice. Very nice.
I apologize. I missed the 2 words piece.
That's okay, Vine.
Lack of listening.
That's all right. That's all right. Josh, 2 or maybe 5 words.
Community and family.
Very nice. Very nice. Kevin?
It's trust, because we didn't have locks in our lockers at Walker.
Earl?
Relationships and values.
Awesome. Oh, you guys are so brilliant and helpful and kind and all of those things that you just listed. You all are out there in the world representing our school so beautifully, and representing our alumni so well. And I personally, as your alumni director, am so thankful for your time. I'm going to let everybody go, but please be sure to stay connected. Make sure you're watching our social media, our Alumni Association social media, so you know what's going on with the group and getting your email. If for some reason you're not receiving alumni communications from me via email on a monthly basis, please reach out and let me know so I can be sure you're added to that list. And thank you again so much. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.